So, hey guys, do you like my screensaver? So, my name is Alejandro. I am a local, so I was tempted to speak in Spanish, but I was told the talk should be in English. So, I'll do it in English, no problem. So, I joined Booking like more than 5 years ago. I left Spain. I decided to try something new. I was working in Amsterdam in a small company. And at some point, I got hired by Booking. I don't know how, but maybe, oops, I was lucky enough or something. Hey, what happened, man? No. View. Okay, now. So today I'm going to talk about A/B testing. I know that this is quite a JavaScript-heavy group. And I was thinking whether I should do like talk like Ricardo, which it will go deeper into our JavaScript, or do something that is more interesting in the way that not everybody talks about A/B testing. Like when I look at how JavaScript gets developed, looking at new libraries, I see a lot of talks, a lot of people talking about new technologies being developed. But later on I go to blogs and I read more or less the same things. And I was thinking maybe I could try something a little bit different. We're going to touch JavaScript as well, but I thought that not everybody talks about A/B testing, and we are lucky enough that because we have so many people and we do so many A/B tests, we get to learn a lot of things. Like we screw up a lot of times, and by those screw ups, we learn a lot, we fix things, and then we move forward. So I'd like to share today some things about A/B testing that we've learned. So as I mentioned, some pitfalls and best practices you should take into account. So who am I? Alejandro. I've been a client-side developer since I joined, and I've been also team leader. If you guys want after the drinks, no, I'll handle it, sorry. If you guys want after in the drinks, we can also talk about team development, talent development, etc. We can talk about anything. And that's my Twitter handle, although I'm not really active on Twitter, sadly. This is the Amsterdam office. We work in that nice building, but the weather is not usually as good as in this picture. Sometimes we get some crazy weather, you know, with shit storms. And so, what is A/B testing? Who doesn't know what is A/B testing? Don't be shy. Okay. I see that a lot of people know what A/B testing is. That's great. Basically, A/B testing is a way of, what you do is, when you want to test changes on your website, you just expose your user group you divide it into two groups, usually 50% and 50%. So group A doesn't see any change, and group B sees a change. And then you let the users use your website, and after a while, several cycles, it can be weeks, months, days, it depends on the product. But after those cycles, you look at some metrics, and then you compare how the website performed. There can be many things that you can measure. We're going to talk about that, but basically that's it. It's compare how the website performs. Do we sell more? Do we sell less? Do people sign up more? Why using A/B testing? This is a really interesting question, because you can really measure the things that you are doing. And that's one of the things that when I started using A/B testing, I was fascinated, because it's like, finally, I know the impact that I'm having by changing things. If I'm changing some JavaScript, if I'm adding this lightbox, if I'm changing the title, I know how users are reacting to that. And I think that's key at this point of in time in which we are. I think traditionally, the traditional model, a lot of designers would just decide this is how the website should look like. You just implement it, and that's it. And you hope that it works. But with A/B testing, you can challenge that. It's like, okay, so you want to do this. Okay, so let's try it. What I like about this is that you don't get the hippos or the expert's opinion. Like the boss, I don't know, you guys know Office Space? Trabajo basura in Spanish? So you don't get this boss telling you like, hey, I would like this button to be pink. Why? Oh, I thought it's a great idea. And you have to do it, and then it's like that. So Hippo is the highest paid person in the organization's opinion. Basically the opinion of the boss. So if the boss comes and says, hey, I want to do this, you might say, well, I'm going to do it because you're the boss, but we are going to A/B test it. And if you see that the results are really bad, you can go and say like, look, your idea was not good. Let me put it that way. So it's really good to verify what you're doing. A typical A/B test will be two variants. You have your base and you have your new feature, the variant. And then you split your users in 50% and 50%. You let the test run for a while, and here are some examples I've taken from the internet. They're a little bit old, but for example, you might change your forms. Forms are a great target for A/B testing. I'm currently on a team where we are working on the area where hotels join booking.com. Our pages are basically a giant form. And believe me, guys, forms are a big pain. Really big pain. We do a lot of user testing. We see it all the time. People tell us, yeah, the booking.com website is really, really friendly to use, really easy. You can book so easily. But yet, you go to a user testing, and you see people struggling. Like you see this old grandma trying to use the site, or a woman that could be your mother, or this man that has never touched a computer, and then they're struggling. And then they raise questions, and they're like, and you think like, you know what? They're right. Like one woman was saying, you know, you're telling me that I can get free cancellation on my hotel if I pay 50 euro extra, which makes sense. Like, if you get a non-refundable hotel, it's cheaper. If you want to have free cancellation, you pay more. But for the woman, just seeing, hey, I need to pay 50 euro, then it's not free cancellation. And these are the kind of things that you are like, what the fuck? And these are the things that you should test with. So what I said, forms, copy is a really strong one. As for example, here in the emails. So you have offers for you. This is from Amazon. And then you have, hey, Alejandro, offers for you. And these things are really powerful. It looks like a really simple, tiny change. But these are the ones that are going to have the biggest impact most of the times. We have, I've seen in 5 years, like, I don't know how many designers try to do a whole redesign of a page, and they screwed up. It's not that they screwed up, but the results were completely bad. And then a copywriter comes by and says, I would like to test the copy of this button instead of, I don't know, instead of reserve, let's make it book. And then suddenly the results, like, it sells like way more. So these are really powerful things. This is an example I made. Like, it looks stupid, right? So we have one button here and one button there. That's a change. We move it. It's on the left, and then we try it on the right, or vice versa. It looks stupid, but these things, this search box is used by millions of people. So you can change a tiny little bit. We are talking about pixels. You push this box down a few pixels, it already has an impact, even though it looks impossible. Those are the nice things that I learned with A/B testing. So once that you decide what feature you would like to test, you need to decide which metrics you want to impact. There are many things that you can measure. For example, here, conversion is the typical one. So how many items do we sell? How many rooms do we sell? How many signups do we get? You can also measure other user metrics like bounce rates, time spent on the page, or for example, navigation times. But there are more, and I think this is really interesting for us, the JavaScript developers and developers in general. We can measure performance. If we want to make a change on the front end, we want to, I don't know, test minified assets. We can test that, and we can see how the page loads vary. Same goes with the backend performance. You want to test a new, I don't know, new query on the database, you run an A/B test, and you can compare the walk log, the SQL walk log, and see how much it takes for your new code and the old code. You can also check for errors. This is really important as well. So when we want to try new code on the website, we usually put it as an A/B test to make sure we don't screw up, meaning no errors. It has the impact we expected on performance, whether it's not impacting performance or if it impacts performance, it's in a good way. And there are also other things that you can measure. I put here the customer care tickets. So if I make a change on the website, you might not affect the conversion, you might not affect other metrics, but you might have a lot of people calling your call center. Suddenly it spikes. You have thousands of people calling your call center. And for us, it's actually a problem because we have a lot of customers, meaning a lot of calls. And sometimes our call center can get overloaded. So if we break the website, they suffer a lot. That means that we cannot handle more requests from our customers, which results in a bad experience. I talked about basic examples of A/B test, those tiny ones, but there's more things that you can do. you can do a multivariant test. So instead of based on a variant one, you can have 5 variants. If you want to change the copy, email headline, for example, the one that I showed, Amazon offers. Hey, Alejandro, we've got Amazon offers for you. Hey, did you know we have offers for you? You can try all these things, so you can compare one against each other. And the nice thing is that by running this test, all these variants at the same time, you can see how they perform against each other, which is really useful. You can see which copy worked best, or you can try. Have you guys heard of the famous Google experiment that they tried 40 shades of blue on a call to action? If you Google that, I saw your face, you look surprised. There's like a famous experiment, I don't know if it's real or they did it for the free advertisement, but they said they tested 40 shades of blue. I think that's a little bit overkill, but they did that because they have so many millions of users, they can just do it. Because if you want to do multivariant testing, you need a big user group. You cannot do with having 500 users per variant, you need more. And that's something I mentioned here at the end. There are some tools. There's one in particular, the power calculator. If you want to run an A/B test, one of the first questions people ask is, how long should I run it for, and how many people should I get in order to know the result is statistically relevant? And power calculators tell you that. So basically you tell, this is my conversion rate and this is the impact I want to measure, like 5% increase, and then it will tell you how long it needs to run and how many people you need to get. So what I mentioned, the Google's 40 shades of blue and copy experiments. You can also run A/B tests for a very small group of users. So instead of 50-50, you can try 5%, 95%. Why do we do this? The typical use case for this are dangerous features or code that can potentially bring down the website. So let's say we want to make a new feature and then we want to load double the times reviews we have. So if we load 100 reviews per hotel, we want to load 200, 300. Of course, that has an impact on the database. So before enabling that for thousands or millions of customers that can potentially bring our servers down, we just run it for a very small group of users and then we monitor closely. And it's really useful because then you see that indeed the wall clock increases and then you can stop it quickly before you have problems. You can optimize the code later. It can also be it can be used to detect errors. Sometimes as well, there's some code that you are like, there's quite some dependencies because we are calling this backend service, needs to do this, etc. Call this API, and we are like, this can be a problem. So you start the test just with a very small population, make sure you don't get errors, and then slowly you start adding users until you make sure, okay, the website is healthy, now we can do 50-50 without risks. What I mentioned here as well, enabling dangerous code. Another thing that I learned at Booking that I never thought of is like graceful degradation or emergency switches. So let's say your servers are under pressure. You've got a lot of users, you're getting a lot of traffic, and your servers are about to die. Like, oh, we're going to start having errors on the website because of overload. You can start disabling features. You can turn off light actions and return like a generic error. You can also not show all the data. So if you go into our website, you can see that we load a lot of data. Facebook, for example. If Facebook is having a lot of pressure, they could have a test that is just disable the chat. Just show a generic error, disable the chat. So what that means is that you can still use the website. There are some features that are not available, but you don't bring your servers down. You can fix the problems. And then later, when everything is healthy, you can re-enable the feature again. You can also, for example, hide buttons. Like shortly after I joined Booking, we had a problem, and then the solution was like, okay, let's hide all these buttons that lead to this page, and then once that we have those servers back up, then we enable the feature again. And I was like, wow, that's genius, and it's not the intended intention of an A/B test. And then you have these experiments, which are the AA, that basically you don't change anything. The website is the same. These tests are to make sure that your tool, the one that is going to give you the report, is giving you accurate results. To make sure that you are tracking the visitors you expected, and the tool is telling you the right data. This is really important. And one more thing, in A/B tests and statistics, you will get false positives, meaning you will get positive results like I'm selling more when you're running an experiment that doesn't change anything. I've seen a lot, and it's just statistical noise. Like, I don't know how many, but 1 in 10 A/B tests, 2 in 10, they will give you a false positive because of the statistics. There's not much you can do about it. I'm not an expert, but there's some reading. Some data scientist recommended me a book. If you guys want, I can dig the email and show it to you and send you the link. So once that you make sure you get data, your A/B test is running, you are getting your results, then it's time to interpret the results. Then we talk about conclusive versus inconclusive. Conclusive results means that we're confident one of the variants is statistically significant. And what the fuck does it mean? So what it means is that we can confidently say, this one is a winner and I know it for sure. What happens a lot of times is that you get, this is an example from the Amazon A/B testing SDK. And then here you can see the confidence at which this test, the results are. So with a 98.85% confidence, I can tell you this variant, variation B, has a higher conversion rate than the control group or base group. And this is really important. Sometimes you can get 70%, that's not enough. 80%, you might want to go with it, but you're not sure. The higher the confidence, the more you know for sure that when you put this feature available for all your users, you're definitely making more conversion or having more conversion. It happens a lot that we get inconclusive results. If there was an effect, it's too small. We don't detect it. What do you do with those? It depends. Normally we don't want to go full on with that because you don't know what you're doing. It might be that you're selling more. It might be that you are selling less. The impact is not too big, but you don't know, so we don't do it. But there are exceptions. When we do code refactors, then we want to have an inconclusive result. If it's positive, even better. But just by having it inconclusive, it's good enough. The code is easier, we can code better, faster, let's go for it. And then here I mentioned there's secondary metrics that you might want to look at. Like, it's not always conversion what you want to measure. Like, let's say you go to Amazon, you buy a product, and then you get this page, hey, you bought this awesome product, thank you for buying. And then you change that, and you want to do an A/B test. So what do you measure there? You cannot measure conversion. I mean, you can measure if people buy again, but you just bought something. You could be screwing up and you don't notice because second purchase is not enough. Maybe people are calling more to your customer service. Maybe people are trying to cancel the purchase they just made. You can also look at performance. Like you can have an inconclusive result, but then the performance of the feature is bad. Don't go full on with that. You can also look at errors. Are we generating more errors? We shouldn't go for that. So, trustworthy data. I think it was Lucas, data scientist from Booking, that said this quote that I really liked. So when running online experiments, getting numbers is easy. But getting numbers you can trust is hard, and we had a lot of issues with that. We have our own A/B testing framework, so unfortunately we cannot open source that yet at the moment because it's a very complex, tailored system tied to Booking specifics. So it's not something that is like we can easily open source because it's very tied to how our infrastructure is. But there's a lot of work that we've done in that framework, and a lot of times we screwed up, and then we need to rerun tests because the data was invalid. If you cannot trust your data, you should make decisions because you don't know if you're having a good impact, bad impact, no impact at all. It's not worth doing it because it's a waste of time. Robots, these guys are interesting. They can bias your results. It happened to us. Suddenly you have this A/B test and you see that in one of the variants, suddenly the visitor graph spikes and it goes beyond the stratosphere, and it's like, what's going on here? It's bots. If you can, you should block them. they can screw up your results. They can be stuck in one of your variants, and then, you know, for base you have 1,000 visitors, for variant you have 10,000. You're screwed. Your visitor distribution is not equal, it's not 50-50, therefore you cannot trust the results. So they can also screw up your conversion rate, because conversion rate is purchases or signups or whatever your goal is divided by number of visitors. If you get more robots, your conversion rate will go down. It can go from 10% to 3%. So therefore, it's not the real conversion rate. They can also click, because there are some robots that parse JavaScript. So you should be careful with these guys. If you can, and you can block them from your A/B tests, it's great. We actually block them because they have screwed up the results several times. And then you have something that happens when you've got too many people doing experiments, but you can have interfering experiments. So the same experiment I mentioned before, and then somebody else can change the color. It can be that the button here in blue doesn't have an impact. The button here in blue doesn't have an impact. The button here in green doesn't have an impact, but this one has an impact. Together, changing the position and the color. If possible, you should avoid it. We used to have an interference tool, but it's a very sticky situation. It's quite complex. I would say try to change one thing at a time. You could, in this case, you could first try the position, then try the color, and if you want, you can have a third variant. So you have one variant, you just change the position. Second variant, you change the color. Third variant, you change the position and the color. And then you can compare and easily see what is making people search more. Is it the color, is it the position, or is it both? And that's why the multivariate tests are very useful. Tracking. I think this is the main pain point that brings me nightmares every day when I code A/B tests. I have screwed up thousands of times. I will keep screwing it up, because if you set it wrongly, you will have wrong distribution of visitors, wrong results, a lot of wasted time. What tracking means is you need to put your users in the experiment. And this simple sentence, what it means is that when your users are exposed to a change, then they should be counted in the report. So, for example, let's say in booking, I changed something in the property page. When you select a hotel and you go, I make a change there. If I track people on the home page and I assign them there, I've got a lot of noise. So you should track your users only when they see the change. And what I'm mentioning here, if you screw up the tracking, you have useless data. You have a lot of wasted time. You run the test, oh, we screwed up. I spent development time. We waited for the test to run. It was blocking other tests. We didn't really know how it was affecting the users. And it brings a lot of anger and frustration. Again, another reference to Office Space. You guys should watch this movie if you haven't seen it. So tracking challenges. You first need to assign your users randomly, and perfectly randomly. If you don't do this, you don't have a proper distribution of visitors across variants, and then you don't get like a 50-50 or 33%, or whatever variants you have. If it's not, if you want to do 50-50 and your results don't show that you have a 50-50 distribution, don't trust the results, because they might give you wrong data. It will tell you some results are conclusive when they are not. Avoid noise. What I was mentioning before, if you track people when they don't see the change, you are tracking people that are not exposed to the feature, meaning you have more visitors that are not seeing the feature. So we're not affecting them. We might not. The more noise you have, the less the impact we can detect. Because it's the same as the robots. You have a lot of visits that they are not being affected by your change. And then you need to run the test for longer in order to detect the impact. What I'm mentioning here, everybody visiting the website when your change is only on the product page. That means a lot of noise, and that happened to me several times. This is a tricky one, track all the variants. I'm going to show you some examples now with some code where I forgot to track some variants. So, using JavaScript for tracking. I'm not going to go into fancy JavaScript. I'm sorry if I disappoint you with that, but I hope that what I show you here entices you to try these approaches and to try A/B testing. You can use, if you don't have an A/B testing framework, there are some solutions out there. You can still use Google Analytics. You can send events to Google Analytics and still try to compare absolute numbers. You can use these techniques here. The thing with JavaScript tracking is that it's very powerful. So for example, we track when you click something and you get the typical light box. Hey, are you sure you want to do this? You can track this with JavaScript. And then you track people only who click. It's very powerful. But the problem is that it's also weak because you're sensitive to JavaScript errors. If people have third-party plugins that trigger errors on your site, and that happens quite often because we see it in our JavaScript errors reports, they can be screwing up your JavaScript and they can be screwing up your tests. They might not be getting tracked. They might not be seeing the feature. And these cookie overrides that I'm mentioning here is when you track, for example, in Google Analytics, you have the Google cookie. And that cookie, when you request a tracking pixel, you send, this is the data I want to record, and they send you back the cookie. If you have multiple simultaneous requests to your server, and they modify the cookie, and one of them tries to send data, and the server says like, okay, I have seen this data, but then you have another request that sends back a cookie without that data, you lose it. You have race conditions. If you guys have a setup with cookies that store information about your tracking, you should be careful with the simultaneous requests that modify the cookie. We don't have this problem anymore, but we had it in the past, and it gave us a lot of headaches. So I'm going to be talking about an example tracking API. I just made it up. It's going to be very simple. It's a bit of a toy API, but I hope that it shows some examples. And if you have questions, we can dig deeper into some of the functions that I'm going to show. The most simple thing to do is track a feature. That's it. You can have this on the server. You can have it on the JavaScript. If you guys want to go for an A/B testing solution, I would recommend that you guys go for server and JavaScript, so you have all the power to do tests and to make changes all through the website. And then the simple thing would be this track feature will return you which variant you are in. Are you in base? Are you in the variant A? Are you in the variant B? So if this function returns B, variant B, then we do cool stuffs. So this is a typical example that we use quite a lot. You've got an item that when you click, you've got a title for a lightbox, and then you show a lightbox. And you pass this object, title, this is the title. Simple thing. We want to do an A/B test with it, and we want to change the title. A simple way of doing this is, if I'm in the variant B, the title is not going to be base, but it's going to be the new title, and we pass it to here. That's it. The nice thing about this is that you're tracking when people are going to be exposed to the change, which is the title of the lightbox. If you track users when your page loads, maybe only 10% of the people click on here. You have a lot of noise, and then you need to run your test for much longer time to detect if there was an impact by this title change. And the first pitfall of tracking this way. Let's say that the do some stuff is something like this. Like I get the position, I get an element, get the offset, and read the top. And then I do a console log of the position. Can you guys see what problems can we have here? Sorry?
Doesn't exist.
Yeah. So what's your name?
Jose.
Jose. Gracias. So if the element doesn't exist, offset returns null, and then this will throw an error. And this will not be called. So your tracking is not going to be executed. The solution you can do with this, aside from fixing the bad code, is to track as early as possible. So what I would do, if you cannot, I mean, this is a very stupid example, I would just fix this. But then the first thing I would do is like move the track to the very beginning. This do some stuff can be 100 lines of code. And I've been beaten by this because in my variant B, I wanted to add some data in the function. I was doing something with data. And then at the end, I had the track. What happened is that this new data broke through an error. This code didn't get executed. And I was losing visitors in the variant. And therefore, I didn't have a 50-50 distribution. So this should be moved to the top.
Sorry, but it will be noise. I mean, you are not actually showing the version. You are not actually doing the show line notes.
Yeah.
So it will be anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It would be noise. But I thought it was a simple example. But because I was thinking of doing something more elaborate, but then the code would look. But it can be like, something
that doesn't affect.
Exactly. You can do like, window.namespace.my new data to show equals this. And then you pass, you do like, I don't know, something that data, and in base it's empty, for example. And then you don't track base. Is that clear, the example? If you guys have questions, please stop me. I can talk a lot, and shut up. If you get too bored, please let me know as well, and I'll try to make it more entertaining. Second pitfall. So this one, we're reading contents from the server. So we have the same lightbox, but then the contents, we're going to load them from the server. And then the server is going to tell us, here you have the old content for the control group or base, or you have the new content if you're in the variant. So we read it. It's a synchronous call, so we wait for it. And then we have, if I have the new variant content, and I track the feature and it's B, then I change the title. And I call the lightbox. Do you guys see a problem with this? So when I call this function, this is the point where I'm telling my API, you have to put this person in the experiment report. This person has seen the change. Any clues?
You're only evaluating one of the features in that case, right? You're only going to track if content is user viable.
Exactly. What's your name?
Luis.
Luis. Gracias, Luis. I've been beaten by this single error a lot of times. Ricardo can also share his experiences. And this is one, I would say it's my top error. No matter how many times I remember it, and when I'm coding, like, yeah, I need to, sometimes I still keep screwing up. This should be the other way around. Track should be called here, and then you should check for the content here. Because what happens here is that you're only tracking in variant 1. So for base, you have no visitors, and for variant 1, you have the 50%, which means wasted time, results cannot be trusted, of course. Let's do it again. Always track base. What I mentioned before, track all the variants. Hey, what happened? Advanced tracking. I showed you a very simple example of tracking. So far, when people click on a button, we just track. You can track also on the server. So we change this content, and then we show you your last viewed hotels, or we show you your last searches. And in the server, it's a switch, like in the basic call I mentioned at the beginning. If track blah, show new content, else show the old content. But there's more that you can do with JavaScript that we use heavily. This is very, very powerful. You track users when the element is visible. If we want to make a change on the footer that is below the fold, very few people actually go there. So if we want to track something there, if you track everybody, you have a lot of noise, because a lot of people just see what is above the fold, and that's it. But if you want to track something that is not visible, then you should use what I'm going to show you. So this is a very simple way of doing it. Track on view this element and the feature. So your element can be shown already in the HTML, and as people scroll, when the element becomes visible, then you track it. I made a very crude implementation of this. So basically, what you do is you get a selector and a feature. If you don't have any, you return because you don't want to track wrong data. And then I have here like a small function. So I have a helper function. If it's visible, this selector, then track the feature, return true, else return false. So what I do is I call it once to see if the element is going to be visible in the current viewport on page load. And if it's not visible, then I'm going to attach it to the scroll event. I'm using here some kind of throttling function. Do you guys know what throttling functions is? Any volunteers?
So it's a function that you put inside this throttle. So if you call it just like every time, every 50 seconds, then it stops the execution and say, okay.
Yes. Correct, yes. And that's very useful for the scroll event because you don't want to hammer you don't want to make a lot of requests to load a tracking pixel. You don't want to have race conditions with the tracking pixel, and you don't want to slow down, or to impact the user experience of the website because you would be firing this all the time. So basically what I'm doing is like if it was not visible on the viewport on the page load, then I scroll, and then what was your name? Juan. As Juan said, you scroll and then you cancel that time. You set a timeout, but you cancel if there's another scroll, and then if there's no more scrolls happening, then the timeout runs, and then you do the tracking. So I'm gonna move to the next pitfall. But this on view tracking is very useful. If you guys want to track, and again, you can use Google Analytics for this. They have a nice API to track events, conversion, etc. You don't need you can use their A/B testing framework, and you can also track events like this. And this is very useful to understand how people are using your website. So tracking on view, it also has some pitfalls, some problems, and you need to know what you're doing. Let's say I have here 3 paragraphs. Of course, they are very little, but imagine that these are big blocks. And then here you have a data attribute. This is something to simplify coding A/B tests. You can just have a handler to detect this and run the tracking. It's very handy, by the way, and it will speed up your development process. So what we are doing is that we put this paragraph when we are in variant B, and then we track when this element is visible. Anybody knows what problems can we have with that?
Maybe not all the JavaScript engine can read from the data.
Sorry?
Maybe not all the JavaScript engine can read from the data.
Could be, but we don't usually see that problem.
I think we are also tracking when the sample content is not visible sometimes. If you're moving, pushing it down.
Well, it should be, so if you scroll, this will be, because what we are going to do is this paragraph, this is going to call, when this element becomes visible, it's going to call the tracking with the scroll. I was not meaning that, that problem. It should work like this, like we should be triggering the track, but there's another problem.
What happens if you scroll into that second time or third time? Is it going to track it?
Well, what we have is a cache. So I didn't want to make the API complex to show in the presentation, but I can discuss this offline later on if you guys, we can talk about it. But we do have like, okay, so if I have tracked this feature, I'm not gonna call it again. I'm just gonna return. If it's in the cache, like already tracked, then I don't do anything. So basically, what I wanted to highlight here is that this element is only added when you're on the variant B. So again, you're only tracking when you're in one of the variants. But there's a more tricky problem. That is this one. So let's say that I put the tracking here. This was old content, so the experiment doesn't change it. But then we add this new content. And this is a very tricky problem that I think most of us, when we started using this feature, we didn't realize. Any volunteers? Does anybody know what could be wrong with this? So this was some old content. When I'm in the variant, I put this content, pushes this down. In base, there's no content here. So it's just these two paragraphs. But when I'm in the variant, this content, it can be big, and it pushes this down.
You lost part of the track base.
Exactly. You lose visitors because this content is pushing people down. So actually, in the variant, you're going to track less because not everybody will scroll down to this point. That's the problem with in-view tracking. You need to know very well where you put your tracking so that both base and the variants are tracked at the same point. If they are at a different height on the page, you're going to have an equal distribution of visitors, which sucks big time because it's a pain to debug. So then what we sometimes do is that we just have an empty div that does the tracking. So no matter what I do here, I can, oops, sorry, no problem. I can add more, remove, but then the tracking point is always in here. So we track in the same spot. So what I mentioned on view sensitive to the position, so make sure that you are tracking on a proper position. This one is a pain in the ass. I'm not going to lie to you. This is a problem. So when somebody clicks on a link, and you want to track an experiment. You don't always need it, but when you need it, it's like, okay, so how do I do it? The problem is that when you click, the browser navigates away. So what you're trying to do is like, okay, so I've got the handler. Yes, I want to send a request to the server to say, you have to track this user. But the browser is already loading another page. So the browser is like, well, I don't care about your request. I don't need to load it because I'm navigating away. And this one gives us headaches. In these cases, you can lose visitors. Well, you should assume you're going to lose visitors. There are several ways you can do it. All of them have issues. You can store the data in the cookie or in local storage, and on the next page load, you see if there's any data, and then you track people. Problems. Local storage, for example, is not synchronous, and I think cookie isn't either. So it's not guaranteed that writing to the cookie is going to finish before you navigate away. So you might lose visitors. You can do it, but you should assume you're going to lose some visitors. If the distribution is okay, you can go forward with it. As long as the distribution is fine and you lose some visitors, it's not that much of a problem. If you have an unequal distribution, that is a problem. What else? You can tweak the link to include an extra parameter in the href so that when the server loads the URL, it does the tracking. But the problem with this is that because you're going to a new page, you are not sure, you can't be sure that you are tracking anyways. There might be a problem with the server, it throws an error. It's not 100% reliable, but you can still try it. We don't have a bulletproof solution yet. If you guys know the solution, I don't know if Victoria mentioned it, but we are hiring, so you can go to booking.com/jobs, apply, or contact me and tell me the solution, and we just hire you because it's awesome. So what I mentioned here, calling tracking pixel or Ajax when browser is loading to another page is not reliable. You can also try with a timeout. I did try once adding a timeout. So you have the on-click handler. I set a timeout, and only when the timeout happens, then you navigate away. Problems. It can be that the tracking takes longer than your timeout, so you still lose the request. And it can also be that, sorry guys, I went blank. So you lose the request. Or it can be that, yeah, of course, you're making the request slower. You're making people wait for you to track. If you make people wait, your conversion can go down. Your metrics or your engagement can go down as well. So I would say either pass a parameter to the server. That's what I would try to do, or use the local storage and or cookie, depending on your browser support. I would go for that. And I don't know how long I took, but do you have any questions? I cannot tell you that because it's confidential, otherwise they will kill me. But it depends where you measure it. If you measure all visitors, it's low. It's very low. I think it should be below, well, maybe 1-2 digits max. Because you have a lot of people. That's the problem with websites like Booking, Amazon, Facebook. Well, Facebook is different, but eBay, Amazon, you have a lot of people that go, and maybe they bounce a lot. It's like, let's say you go to TripAdvisor, which is a meta search. A lot of people go there, they go, oh, so I go to Booking, Expedia, hotels.com, blah, blah, they go and they bounce immediately. So there are some people trying to reduce the bounce rates, for example. There are some people trying to get more engagement, people to log in. But conversion, if you measure all visitors, it's low. Of course, if you measure when you are on the checkout, like I'm buying already, that's very high.
Is it harder to measure when the conversion rate is lower? Is it harder to make it significant?
To make
it significant?
Well, I think it depends more on the noise. Like if you're tracking all the visitors that are being exposed to the feature and not random people that don't see the feature, it should be fine. If let's say you track on the homepage, a lot of people go to the homepage, but maybe you have something on the footer. If you track at the beginning, but they don't see the change, you've got a lot of noise. You cannot detect anything. That's the problem I was mentioning before. So it's not related to the conversion itself, but it's more related to who you track. Because I've seen experiments that improve, like, I don't know, you can have sections that have like 3% conversion, for example, and they still have a significant change. It's not that you will go from 3% to 5%. That's very high. But maybe from 3 to 3.5. That's a very good question. It depends on the product. Normally we use week cycles. So a few weeks. If you've got a lot of visitors, you might need 1 week, for example. If you have few visitors, you might need 3-4 weeks. Remember I mentioned the power calculator? That tool can help you with determining how many people you need to, for how long you need to run it, or at least how many people you need. And with either of those, you can know for how long it needs to run. Things to bear in mind, cycles. So people don't behave the same in the weekends than on the weekdays. They might have completely different patterns. People might use more the mobile devices on weekends and the desktop website on weekdays. Also seasonality. On summer peak season, people book more. They might have a different pattern. So we usually use week cycles.
So you track these changes also in the experiment or after you are analyzing?
What do you mean the changes, like the results or? So by tracking a cycle, you're tracking the weekdays and the weekend days as well. And if I track only from Monday to Friday, I'm tracking one behavior. But if I track from Monday to Sunday, I'm getting both behaviors in my experiment. So it would be a matter of doing week cycles. Like, let's do 7 days, or 14, or 21, or 28. Because like this, you're making sure you're having all these different behaviors on your experiment. A more difficult question is like, how do you deal with seasonality? People in winter might use your product differently than in summer. For example, Amazon with the Christmas holidays, people buy a lot of stuff. They might want to get different things that they might want to get in the summer. So seasonality is very difficult. What I've seen people doing is post-analysis. So you have the A/B tests are small, But then the data scientists, they look at a whole year cycle for certain metrics, and they don't look at small A/B tests, but they see trends, like is it going down, and then if they find some things, then they might tell us, hey, we see this pattern. You might want to use this kind of behavior to decide which feature you want to test. But it's difficult. It's a difficult question.